This is a civil defense message for Monday, May 21st at 6 in the evening. Hawaiian Volcano Observatory reports that an explosive eruption at Kilauea Summit has occurred at 5:51 p.m. The resulting ash plume may affect surrounding areas. Hawaiian Volcano Observatory reports that eruptive lava activity at multiple fissures continues with one flow entering the ocean. Fissure 22 continues to produce most of the lava feeding the flows. Lava from Fissure 22 has crossed onto the Puna geothermal venture property. County, state, and federal partners have been collaborating closely to monitor the situation and work with PGV to ensure the safety of the surrounding communities. 10 of the 11 wells have been quenched. Efforts are ongoing to make sure the site is secure and the community is kept safe. Due to the current volcanic activity, the following information is provided for your awareness. Residents in the affected area should be prepared to leave the area with little notice due to gas or lava inundation. Take action necessary to prepare ahead of time. Gas levels remain high. Limit further exposure by sheltering in place or leaving the area. Due to unsafe conditions, the following policies are in effect. Kalapana and Kapoho roads are open to residents only. Identification is required. Highway 137 is closed to all traffic between Kamaili Road and Pohoiki Road. Kamali'i Road is closed to all through traffic. An eruption community information meeting will be held at the Poho High Cafeteria on Tuesday, May 22nd at 5:30 in the evening. The residents of Lower Puna are going through a very difficult time. We ask for your help by avoiding the affected areas. Thank you for your understanding. We are on the watch 24 hours a day for your safety. This is your Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency.
We just completed an overflight. It is Fissure 22 that's actually putting out all the lava. It's been a little bit confusing with fissures connecting and unconnecting, but it became fairly clear that this was Fissure 22. It's a short section of fissure that's actually fountaining lava up to 140 feet or so at times. And it is the one that's producing lava going into the ocean. The channel going down to the ocean is actually quite broad, but it is currently only feeding one of the ocean entries. There are two flows going to the coast, but only the eastern one is currently active. Very good sized plume coming out of the ocean entry, and there's a small delta being formed. This morning it was about 80 yards from the old coast to the new coast. There are a few fissures still active in the rift zone area. 6 has reactivated a couple of times and is feeding a fairly short flow right in the Leilani-Pohoiki intersection area. Fissure 19 and 17 are weekly spattering still. 17 has been active for quite a long time. The ones I haven't mentioned are basically have stopped being active. They seem to be kind of intermittently coming and going, especially in the northeast section of this line of fissures. Let's see, at the summit, the rift zone. The rift zone, the deformation around the rift zone, the amount of swelling and the number of earthquakes, all of that is diminishing. It continues to slow down, which is somewhat good news. The summit, we had an explosive eruption at about 1 a.m. this morning. Eruption cloud up to 7,000 feet. We had a number of small ash emissions, which have been an unusual amount of ash in them. So that's it.
This being day 18 of the eruption, in terms of overall volume, is this the most impressive in terms of what we've seen in terms of total activity?
I'd have to say no. It's this is still the early part of the eruption, especially this second phase, which is very fluid stuff. And usually in an eruption, the first 2 or 3 days, the eruption rate is quite high, and then it will tail off. So I think this was just a long sort of pre-eruption before we got to the really voluminous stuff. And we're still in the high rate. We don't really have a good idea of how to do that, but we have UAS team here, drones basically that are doing LiDAR of the area, and if they were able to kind of do LiDAR of the whole area, we should be able to get a pretty good volume estimate and answer that question better.
So, with the deformation, when you say it seems to be fairly good news, essentially you're not getting as much lava pumped in, or is it just because it's open?
It's stabilizing. Yeah, the Earth is elastic, more or less elastic, and so even if there was a big push and it stopped, the Earth around it would be accommodating that pressure for a while. So if it stopped, it might have stopped a day or two before this, but basically all the signs are that it stopped inflating. It stopped relaxing. It's happy at this point.
So when you look at Kilauea and you look at the history, is that common for it to settle like that? And has it been common for it to settle and then pick back up again, or is that normally sort of a precursor for just slowing down and ultimately stopping?
Nothing's for sure. This is a good sign of the present situation, but doesn't necessarily mean that it won't pick up again. We're looking into that possibility. It's clearly a possibility, but we're looking at other intrusions that we've seen, much smaller, of course, than this one. And I don't recall right now where we are in that study, but whether there's a possibility of it picking up again or not, or is it related to size? Can't answer that right now.
All of the activity for the last week or so has been a little further down in the rift zone. There doesn't seem to be much seismic activity higher up towards Leilani. Do you see a much lower risk for Leilani at this point, or would you also say that Leilani still is in a high-risk area?
I would say Leilani is, the fissure is established right now. The trend of the fissure is established, and it's not clear yet whether new fissures will open up, or whether we'll have these fissures for a while, or whether this will shut off. We know that the ground under Highway 130 that's in line with this fissure line is hot. It's still not producing sulfur dioxide, but it is hot. So, I think all the possibilities we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks are still on the table.
Can you talk a little bit about the fissure? I thought it was 22 that was closest to PGV, since it was talking PGV. What's going on with that?
Sorry.
You had mentioned 22 is
Yes.
the main one. And
Right now, yes.
Okay. I'm trying to think of where they are all in the line there. Is the 22, is that the one that's close to PGV?
They're all kind of right on the line at the southern boundary of what I think is the PGV property. So, they're all pretty darn close. 22 is I think it's probably the one that's most directly south of the main generation area.
And was that the one that had a little bit more northerly flow to that one that had come close to PGV?
What we were talking about before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the main actor at the moment.
All right.
And it's producing a small perched pond on its north side. Most of the lava is going south to the ocean entry, but there's a small perched pond on the north side that's being fed partially by spatter that kind of goes over the edge. There's also a line of very low fountains to the west of the main big 180-foot fountain, and that's also feeding this perch pond. The perch pond will keep building itself up as it overflows a bit, and each time it overflows, which is done about twice now, it's produced a very narrow flow that's gone out maybe a couple hundred feet before it solidifies, and the pond builds up again until another flow like that comes out. So we're keeping an eye on that over the next several hours in support of CD and Tom Travis's work. The perch pond itself stays relatively fixed in its position, and so the flows themselves come out of they're basically small breaches of that rim. It's like an outdoor swimming pool that has little lapses right up at the surface, and so it pushes out these little flows, that one will seal up, it'll push out another one. And so these flows become kind of radial to the pond. So far there's been no ultimate advance of the flow itself. There's no organized advance. It's just these radial things. And this pond took a while to develop, so there was some advancement of the flow last night. But it simply was the initial laying of the ground for the perched pond that now exists.
And what's holding that pond in? The perched pond, I don't understand. Maybe you can explain.
Well, the perched part means that lava is put into this pond, and every once in a while it will overflow. But lava, not being water, it will solidify once it overflows, so it builds up that particular part of the rim. And over time, that rim can get built up quite high. We've had perched ponds at Puna several times. And almost every time that Puna has collapsed and lava has come back, it's come back as first it fills the bottom, and then it starts perching a pond in there, and it can come up, several hundred feet with the bottom. So it's a very common mechanism. It's kind of fun to see over time. It's very slow, of course, but.
So I guess the geology of that, the rims of that don't give way, or you just overflows. It's not necessarily they fall apart if there's a sudden surge in additional lava or anything that we've seen.
No, yeah, they'll overflow, which will then make the rim higher and make it more difficult for the next overflow, etc.